well. So we'll go ahead and start with Eric.
Are we expecting any more colleagues?
Any more?
Any more colleagues?
No. Yeah, Councilman Ledford's not gonna be here, and I don't know about anybody else.
Oh, we got a quorum.
Yeah,
We
we
don't have
tested it,
to
so hopefully
complain,
it'll.
but I'm just disappointed. It's important stuff to talk about.
So we don't have to have one for the chief?
We're not voting on it.
Oh. Thank you for educating.
Sorry, yeah, okay. Okay, all right. Thank you, Council, for letting us come today and talk about wanted to give you an update on the City of Chattanooga subdivision regulations, proposed changes that the Planning Department has been leading for about the last year. We've been going through, I'll sort of explain a little bit why we have undertaken this, what has been happening, and where we will be going in the next few weeks and months. Wanted to give you an update, although Planning Commission is the final approving body for both the subdivision regulation changes as well as subdivisions generally. This is impacting each of your districts, the regulations as new subdivisions are built, both today and going forward. Impacts your constituents, both residents as well as people within the development community. So I wanted you to know a little bit more about that. Shared an executive summary that describes a little bit more about this process, where we are at, and the issues that we have been dealing with, and can provide more information, both the details of what we're talking about today, as well as anything that has gone on throughout the process. But I'll start. Just by saying the subdivision regulations have existed for decades and shaped the way that subdivisions are built all across the city. These are distinct from the county regulations unique to the City of Chattanooga. In 2014, a large portion of the street design standards were removed from the regulations. At that time, it was an attempt to try to simplify the process and have other street design manuals control how subdivisions were being built at that time. Since then, since 2014, we have heard consistently, both from the development community as well as staff, that not having those in a consistent place, one single place, has been challenging, and requests have been made to add street design standards back to the subdivision regulations to be able to have a single place where people can go to understand what they need to do as new subdivisions are being proposed, and how Planning Commission will ultimately be considering those. We're trying to do three separate things as we're considering new subdivision language, regulation language to go back into it. One, we're trying to make sure that we understand what our peer cities across the state are doing, understanding that cities within Tennessee are all operating under the same state legislation, but trying to see different geographies, different populations, how subdivisions are being built, making sure that we're keeping up with that. Additionally, making sure that we are aligning with the current city codes, in particular aligning with the recently adopted 2018 version of the International Fire Code, which Council adopted in December of 2022, as well as other development standards that the city uses. And lastly, making sure that we're aligning with our other policy priorities, including the One Chattanooga Plan and other studies that the RPA has done, including our People, Places, Paths study, which is helping to understand connectivity generally of our transportation network. Just an overview of what we have done in the last 12 months or so, a little bit more than 12 months. We've had 6 public sessions, both work sessions, working groups, attended both by plan commissioners as well as the development community, to make sure that we are understanding what concerns are, where the points of conflict might be, and how we can come to compromise along that way. We're moving towards Planning Commission action at their upcoming meeting on August 14th. We also received feedback in written format through these, as you can see, from multiple associations as well as individuals, and then in working group meetings, having detailed back and forth conversations with a number of those same individuals to hear their feedback on it. Overall, we have 54 potential sections that we're proposing to add or modify. You can see green in that green row. Those are the number of those sections where we believe there's agreement between staff and the development community. At the beginning of the year, we were about 50%. We've made some changes at a couple points. The Planning Commission saw it again in March of this year. We had made some changes based on feedback from Planning Commission as well as the development community, and then had the 2 working sessions between March and July, which was the last version that we have currently, and have made significant changes. We think real compromises from both ends, and have brought that down to 11. They're kind of, it's 11 separate sections, but are really within six areas of disagreement. You can list them there. I'm happy to go into detail about those if you would like. One thing I do want to highlight is the variance process. Staff believes that the variance process that already currently exists is adequately addressing situations where subdivisions may be a little bit unique, or the design standards that are outlined within these potential changes may not exactly meet either unique conditions to the site or desires of the development community to be able to adapt to what they're doing and deliver the product that they're hoping to get. There's currently a variance process where applicants submit their preliminary plots as well as variance requests. Those are considered simultaneously both by staff and then ultimately by Planning Commission. That's currently how the process works. What we would endeavor to do now is add a pre-submittal meeting, modeling that on what the county has been doing over time, really to try to flag what the areas of change might need to be, ways that we can, both staff and the applicant can reach agreements before they are submitting to that to help ease that process, as well as consolidating the city's response to that, making sure that we're getting cross-departmental responses and giving a single response back to both the applicant and then ultimately Planning Commission for their consideration. Really quickly, some next steps. As I mentioned, on August 14th, Planning Commission will be considering the proposed language. We would propose to have a grace period or a delayed start until the beginning of 2024. We know that there are a lot of developments that are currently in progress that have been being developed to the current standards as they are today. We want to give people time to be able to see those through and make adjustments over the coming months as needed. We would also are committing to doing 6 and 12 month at least reviews so that we can, of how things are going, where there are continued sticky points, if we need to continue to make adjustments. It's been almost 10 years since significant changes have been made to the subdivision regulations. We don't want that to continue to be another 10 years before they're made. You can think about this as a more iterative process so that we can continue to adjust over time. Happy to take any questions or provide any additional information. Yeah.
First, thank you very much for the continued effort and intentional process that you have overlaid with this. I was at the Planning Commission meeting that went sideways, where there were, y'all, there was conversation for, I want to say 2.5 hours about the preamble to the document. Like, they've come a really long way. Yeah, it was nuts. Chris is shaking his head. He remembers. You know, like, so just the word regulation is too harsh, that kind of thing. So to know that you all are at a place where you've got 11 points of friction, and knowing that you went into it, that you all are representing the regional planning agency and are coming at this with the plan for the city. And you're obviously not going to agree on everything, but the things that, as I see these sticking points, they resonate with me as a representative of District 2 to press for connectivity. I have neighborhoods, you guys, in my district that are all just cul-de-sac street, like one street, and you turn around, one street and you turn around. There's no connectivity for walking. It's really problematic. The same thing with sidewalks. I mean, we have, what, $1 billion plus in sidewalk needs in our city. And that's because these neighborhoods weren't built with sidewalks in the first place. And so if we can address that, and I think your point about keeping it as a variance instead of by right is probably pretty smart. And the turnaround piece has been, has really reared its head in my district recently as well. The need for emergency vehicles and our municipal trash and recycling vehicles to have easy egress to turn around are all really important. So those stand out to me as everybody wants to work toward compromise, but those are some points that for me seem super important.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, and I will add to each of those points, you should really credit the Department of Public Works and the fire department and the land development office among plenty of people across the city who really, their expertise and operational needs are really what we're trying to address among other issues.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, if we have a city that's easier to maintain, it'll be less expensive to maintain, hopefully, over the long term.
That's been a big issue. Folks in various subdivisions where the truck will back up in somebody's grass and all that
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
And I like that, limiting garbage truck reversing,
Yeah.
spot on. Thanks.
Any other comments or questions for Eric? All right, well, thank you so much for the update. Do you have anything else?
No, if you have any questions or would like to see details about any of this, please just reach out and we can share that.
Can I have a digital of this?
Sure, yes, happy to share it. Well, I'll share that with everyone.
Yes, please, yeah, just give it to Nicole and she'll give it to us.
Will do? Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Good.
All right, next up, we do have a, social and economic equity study proposal by Councilwoman Coonrod.
Thank you, Chair. Everybody should have a copy of, at least on council, a copy of it that, Ms. Nicole emailed out. It's been some months since we were able to get it on to discuss it and share, when it came up about we had some additional funds that we needed to encumber and what would council like to see with it. So this was a part of that discussion. But it's just done got passed down. But I think it aligns with the One Chattanooga plan. When if you can, you want to pull up page 8 of that plan, it says 1 in 3 children are living and growing up in poverty in Chattanooga. That's approximately 8,797 children. 39.5% are housing burden. That means they pay at least 35% of their income on rent or household things. And then we are the bottom 9% amongst the worst places in America in helping poor people up the income ladder. On page 16, it talks about closing the gaps in public health. And the statement that really stood out to me is that every Chattanoogan deserves the opportunity to succeed, regardless of, your place, your race, or whatever you identify by. And then page 19, it's interesting that it leads off with the number one thing, and that's equity. It talks about equity. And number 3 is acting in the urgency of now. So when I look at, thought about the plan, a proposal for us to do a Chattanooga social and economic equity study proposal. And this way, we can know exactly, the disparities that are happening in our community. For decades, we continue to talk about these same disparities, and then we come up with these things, or we suggest during campaign seasons, and nothing ever gets resolved or introduced, or the disparities are not, being reduced or anything like that. And our communities are suffering. It's not just the black community, because I've had numerous of emails in regards to this proposal, is that people are looking at it as if I'm saying for reparations or it's solely just for black community. But when you look at other synonyms to reparations, it could be restitution. I had to pay restitution. If you go to court, you're being offered a restitution, and it's just another term for reparations. It's just something that you have to pay. Satisfaction is another word for reparations. But we're not talking about reparations in this proposal. We're talking about social and economic equity across the whole city of Chattanooga. Because sometimes in the conversation, or when we're only talking about black people and, the disparities in black communities, is that we're overlooking other people that live in our community, such as poor white people. We're overlooking the LGBTQ plus community, that people that reside in our community, because these disparities economically affect them too, and socially. So it's just about, and if we could remove all those identities, the skin color, what you identify by, or any of those things, income levels specific higher end, then we can really get to the root cause of what the proposal needs to do. And it can help better shape and form the work, and we could be a part of One Chattanooga, because right now we're only talking about it. But we're not really doing much about it when it comes to the areas that really need to be, that it can really do some changes in for those areas.
Any comments, council?
I mean, if you do, you go first.
Oh,
I've
yes,
already
first,
talked about it.
first, Councilwoman Coonrod, thank you for bringing this study. I think,
the last sentence of this as, you know, this will provide policy recommendations on ways to mitigate related inequities in effective and feasible ways. So I think just the objective of this study is great. And, you know, I like it. I think it's a great idea to see, because just as former councilman, I believe, King did a study about disparity years ago. And now we're seeing that happen with our pay plan and things like that. So, you know, studies need to be done, and I think they, in long term, can really help us, especially in providing those policy recommendations if we're trying to move Chattanooga from 2 Chattanoogas to 1 Chattanooga. So I really like the idea of this study and like the idea of what's going on. I would like, I know you have Dr. Molden, Marcus Molden, so I would love to hear from him at some point before, I guess, a final decision is made into this. So I think it's a great idea. I think studies are important, and, you know, it's something that we can really potentially help with some of the legislative matters that we have. So, Councilwoman Hill, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you. I am tracking with you, and also am in support of making real strides in social and economic equity. I also highlighted the points about the goal of developing policy recommendations for addressing, because my hope would be that anything that we receive becomes actionable. So the same thing with the work that our chief housing officer has been doing around affordable housing. Soon we're going to be getting a presentation that is the action steps. If here are actual policy changes that we as this body are responsible for taking up and making decisions on, because that's the unique work that we do within the community. I wonder, well, Councilwoman Coonrod, you pointed out different demographic groups, but what I notice, and when I am in other rooms where people feel comfortable speaking very frankly, is that our greatest disparity in Chattanooga is between our white citizens and our black citizens. That is where our greatest economic disparity is, our greatest health disparity. And if we want to move a needle, what I'm learning is we've got to be willing to talk about that in very clear terms. Because in as much as when I say everyone belongs and I focus my work on ensuring that our LGBTQ plus neighbors feel safe moving about our communities, the reality is that we have many, many more population-wise of people who are black, who are living a very different life and with different access than people who are white. And I recognize I'm a white woman speaking about this, and I'm by no means an expert. So I wonder if we might be brave enough to put that fine point on it. Because I think if we don't disaggregate our data, if we don't continually say, yeah, but how many home loans were given to black families versus white families, or if we don't look at those percentages, can we make progress? And so as I was reading this, I thought about, first I thought, what other work has the city done already with equity studies? But what you're looking at, I think, is slightly different than anything the city has done. But I do think we might do well if the council's interested in having the Urban League come and present on the State of Black Chattanooga report. Are we on the same page?
Yeah, right there.
Because a lot of the the systemic societal issues, I know that they're broken down with employment, housing, healthcare, criminal justice in that State of Black Chattanooga report. And what we might be able to do is, if we were to get that report, then be able to follow up with Professor Malden and say, okay, here's the other stuff we need. And now, based on this State of Black Chattanooga, your additional stuff, now what are the policy things that we need to look at? Just a thought. I think we can't talk about racial equity without talking about race. And we just have to be willing to do it. And when I say we, I definitely often mean white people getting comfortable with that. And
Thank you. Madam Vice Chair Hill, any other comments or questions before we go ahead?
Well, I agree with everything that you said, but from my standpoint as a black woman, if we're gonna move towards a one Chattanooga society, it's gotta be inclusive of everybody. Like you say, it don't matter to me if you white or black, cause white people, when I look at the data, you got white people struggling more than black people struggling. But the data that we get presented, it only shows that it's black people.
well,
Let me
I'm sorry,
finish.
I'm sorry.
But I get all that. But if we, in the study that the Urban League done, it was just solely based on black people, really. But which is good, we can use all that information too. But I want us to focus on how we're really gonna get to the one Chattanooga thing. We get the numbers with, how many white people here, how many black people here. I'm cool with all that, but we still gotta get to a point where we gonna focus on a one Chattanooga, cause we serve in a capacity that's nonpartisan. It don't matter what the person's income level is, when they come to us, what they identify with, when they come to us with an issue where we can govern our city council, we don't ask them, are you white, are you black, what do you identify with, what's your income levels? We don't ask none of that, even though we can visually see them, what they look like or whatever. So that was because all these issues, every single one of these issues affect white people, it affect black people, it affect Hispanics. Because if you poor and white, and you gonna not have access to food, just like I don't have access to food. You gonna have limitations on housing. It's a lot of white people moving into housing projects in the West Side now, but we don't talk about it because we want to make it appear as if it's only black people living in these harsh conditions, and it's not. But however the council want to move, I'm fine with that.
We'll do Councilman Hester and
My thought is this, there's been many studies regarding the poor, those disenfranchised. You mentioned the Urban League, NAACP, UTC's done studies, numerous studies. Let's not just do studies. Let's make sure there's an implementation. We need to run with this thing rather than just gathering up 10 years from now. We look back, oh, they had a study 10 years ago. Let's do something with it. That's my thought.
Madam Vice Chair.
Well, just in response, Councilwoman Coonrod, to your point, I don't disagree that we have poor white people. We are a diverse community. But in the seats where I've sat, around the tables that I've sat, when I look at disaggregated data, specifically about education and housing, because those are the two things that I've spent a great deal of time on. A poor white child in Hamilton County schools will perform better on standardized tests than a middle-income black child. In every school in Hamilton County except one. And that is, no, it's not. It's Wallace.
Wallace A. Smith.
Wallace A.
Wallace A.
Smith
Smith?
is the only school in the entire system that has the same or very similar outcomes for children, black and white, regardless of income. One school. In housing, a person who is white who makes $100,000 a year is, I think, 3 times more likely to get approved for a loan than a person who is black who makes $150,000 a year. So to me, those numbers are undeniable. And I understand the easier to swallow concept of we want to move everybody. And we do want to move everybody, but the reality is that if we want to move the whole, we have to move the people that need it the most. And that, I'd rather spend time on really making progress than saying we want to do an equity study that keeps things watered down. Here's another example. Like if we don't disaggregate our data, something that I'm seeing is that when we're looking at housing, you know, our area median income is what, about $54,000 a year? Y'all correct me if I'm wrong, but that's our area median income. Well, people who are moving to Chattanooga, they make about $73,000 a year. So if we don't disaggregate our data and take it apart, then in 5 years, the Chamber of Commerce is gonna come to us and say, hey, our area median income is up, our education level's up, you know, our family achievement is up, and then what we won't know, what we won't be able to know if we don't take it apart, is that was because we diluted the people who had lived in Chattanooga the 12 years prior, right? And we won't have actually improved or helped the citizens of Chattanooga improve. We will have just shipped in new folks who make the numbers look snazzier. You know what I'm saying?
That's it, Vice Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, anyone else have any other comments? All right, so this is a proposal, you all have received it. Just to go over the cost for this, the total cost of the project is the total, $27,097. Dr. Marcus Molden at UTC, is the proposed professor, and he's the associate professor of public policy and administration. And of course, we see the goal of this is to provide policy recommendations on ways to mitigate related inequities in effective and peaceful ways. It does align with what we do as council because we are the legislative branch as well. And just in comparison, this was $27,000 when Professor Acuff did short-term vacation rentals. The final cost on that one was $19,326, but the contracted amount was $47,000. So just keep that in mind that this has come in lower than the contracted amount for the previous study that council has done. So with that, it's up to us as a council. Do we want to proceed forward, or do we want to bring Dr. Malden in to get a little bit more information about his scope of work? You can contact Dr. Okay.
Chapter, when would you like him to come?
Soon.
Yeah, let's look at, how's the 15th gonna be okay?
You won't be here, is that okay?
You sure?
Yeah, I know Marcus, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
15's great.
The 15th, so is he available for the 15th strategic planning to come in and give us more information about the scope of work and to answer any questions council may have? And then based on the information that he receives from council, that he can get back with us about maybe potentially, I won't say different scope of work, but just more information about what we may want to see for August the 15th, the 2 o'clock strategic planning.
That'd be awesome.
Okay, that's good, Councilman.
What, August
I just-
29th?
Oh, you're not gonna be here either.
I won't be.
That's right.
I won't be here.
How she say, did you say August the 15th or the 29th?
Yeah, the 15th,
Yes,
let's do,
15th.
cause we do first.
Yeah,
and third.
everybody gonna be gone, I think.
On the 15th?
Yeah, and we're not meeting on the 4th, on September 5th.
Goodness gracious.
Because
Where everybody gonna be on the 15th?
I got 2 out of town.
What about next week on the 8th?
the 8th, okay.
Yeah, what about
Bring
just
them
a,
into-
yeah,
You
3:30?
at least give them
For the
cushion.
3:30 meeting, okay. So
Oh,
we can bring.
he ready, he ready.
Well, I won't be here the 8th, so I would like to hear what he has to say,
Okay.
because I don't actually know.
Okay, so you gonna be out the 8th and the 15th.
22nd?
22nd?
What about the 22nd?
I'm good, I think on 22nd.
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 We're the bosses of
Yeah,
our own
here
schedule.
we go. So August 22nd.
Well, what about if he could come at 3:30 and talk about
Yeah,
it?
that's fine, if he can
I
come through
asked him
for
if
our
he can come
agenda
today,
session.
cause then everybody here.
On
Yeah.
22nd.
So August 22nd,
Nice
agenda
Sunday.
session, we'll have a presentation by Dr.
Or do y'all want him to come today?
No.
Okay.
So we'll do, August 22nd, 3 PM agenda session, and Dr. Malden will come and give us a presentation about his scope of work, and then answer any questions the council may have, and then from that meeting, we'll look at him to send us maybe a, updated scope of work, and then we can make a decision from there. Is that
Okay. That'll be perfectly fine, thank you, and I'll just add, like, it ain't, I'm just presenting it, and it's my hope that we will do the hard work with it and quit talking about it, but this study, nobody has done, cause they only talking specifically about black people and the oppression of black people, so there's a difference with social and economic equity to move us in a one Chattanooga way, and that's what I'm looking for. Yeah, and I know some stuff, the state will try to, overrule, but it's up to us to push the envelope to say, that's what we got an attorney for. We gonna push it, and that's it.
Thank you so much
Councilwoman Cool, I
You're welcome.
appreciate you. Next, if you take a look at your strategic planning, agenda, other business, we do have some pending presentations for August 15th of the Ed Connect update, housing action plan, affordable housing, committee, August 29th. Also, Madam Vice Chair, is there a, affordable housing committee on the 22nd as well?
On the 22nd, the Eviction Prevention Initiative has requested an affordable housing
Okay.
committee meeting to present. They're planning a transition from of their ARP dollars to move into a long-term agreement with Legal Aid of Tennessee to manage the programs. They're gonna be walking us through all that.
Okay, so that's on the 22nd, so that's not on this agenda, but it will be, that will take place on the 22nd.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and then, so you have 3 committees, no, well, 2 this month and 1 next month. All right, if you, of course, we have our agenda session coming up at 3:30. If you would take a look at your board appointments, I see Chris is in here. So if you have any questions about your board appointments, he's here, looking great. So thank, yes.
Chris, now are we keeping the old, sports authority board, or are they doing away with it?
Yes, ma'am.
They
We'll-
keeping
we'll
it,
have
okay.
the old one as well as the
Okay.
Okay,
definitions.
okay.
So I have a question. So Chris Mines for animal control, that is that filled, or are we still working on it?
We're vetting the person, I'm vetting them for you.
Okay.
I should have an answer this week on that.
Okay,
person you have.
all right, thank you.
Okay. Ooh, all right. So you see those, are there any additional questions for Chris about
I
board
see it.
appointments? All right, any comments or announcements?
Announcement, I want to create or explore how we can create changes in our blighted tax, Esquire,
Blighted tax,
right, in blighted areas, right,
in blighted areas or
Right.
like blighted properties?
blighted properties, right.
Okay, so
Yeah.
looking at blighted properties and how we
That's
tax
correct,
them?
that's correct.
Currently, I think just under the state law, it allows y'all to deal with blighted properties by trying to remedy things, to at least fix things, and maybe to tear down things, and to impose a lien against the property, but I'm not sure there's a separate tax at this point, but I'll double check and make sure
Okay,
we got it.
okay.
Phil, is there a vacancy tax in Tennessee law?
I do not think so.
I saw that on a document recently, just
Vacancy.
the word vacancy tax, and I'd never heard of it, but
Vacant property tax, okay?
I'm not, I don't know, I'm just asking a question. Is that a thing in
We
Tennessee?
clearly have minimum standards for keeping housing up, and that's the
Yeah.
reason, a lot of times you have folks that are actually boarding up things that are vacant in that regard, but how long they leave them, as long as it's not a safety issue to others, is not usually dealt with, but that's something we need to look at.
Okay, yeah, definitely, we need to look at that,
Right,
you know,
All right, anything else, Councilman Hester?
that's it, thank you, thank you.
yeah,
Thank you,
same
Phil.
thing, Phil, I had forwarded you an email about the state law that says that we can sue property owners for blighted properties.
Right.
Now, are we, in that approach, are we supposed to go through code enforcement, or to say, hey, we're gonna send you a couple of things, and you go to court and they just give you a fine? But some of our communities, we have so many blighted properties that are eyesores in our communities, like, it's time for us to take, a stronger action to say, nah, we finna sue you because you continue to have this in our community in that way.
Ms. Castile and codes enforcement on there is at least usually in charge with giving citations to people and notices to people. In the event that they don't complete those works, then we can impose municipal liens against the property to get them done correctly, and eventually have those properties torn down if they're not completed. And that's what's gotta be done, at least under our current provisions in the code. If there's additional ability under state law to impose something more, I'll look into that and see what I can let you know here about next meeting.
Well, I'm ready to be councilwoman suing the city, cause y'all got plenty of property that's eyesores in our districts. Y'all need to get on it.
Okay, so they're owned by the city based
Oh, y'all,
on back tax?
the city with property is horrible.
Okay. And a lot
Y'all
of
the
problems
worst landlords.
in tax issues on there is they are now owned by the city and the county because of the property issues. And there's a redemption period that's involved after back tax issues on there for a little bit of time. But yes, if it's city-owned property, we should be maintaining that, yes.
any other comments or questions, announcements? All right, well, with that, we will adjourn to 3:30.
Thank you, ma'am.